Welcome back to Apex Sci-Fi. There is a concept in robotics called the uncanny valley. It suggests that as a robot becomes more human-like, our emotional response to it becomes more positive. Until a certain point. When it becomes almost human but not quite. When the skin is too smooth, the eyes are dead, the movement is slightly stiff, our response drops into a valley of revulsion. We feel fear. Disgust. Our instincts scream, that is a corpse. That is a predator. That is wrong. Evolution gave us this instinct for a reason. To detect sickness. To detect death. Or perhaps, to detect imposters. Today's story is about the Tuesday event. The day the uncanny valley stopped being a theory and became a global reality. It wasn't a spaceship landing on the White House lawn. It was a broadcast. And for the first time in history, 8 billion people looked at their screens and collectively realized, the people in charge are not people anymore. If you have ever looked at a politician and felt like their smile was fake, smash that like button. You might be more right than you know. And if you want to know what happens when the mask slips on live TV, subscribe and ring the bell. We are now interrupting your regularly scheduled programming. The alert. It began at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There was no build-up. No news leaks. No rumors on Twitter. Simultaneously, every smartphone in the world buzzed. Every television channel cut to black. Every radio station stopped playing music. The emergency alert system tone screeched across the planet. Global priority broadcast. Stand by for a joint statement. In a studio apartment in Los Angeles, Sarah sat at her desk. Sarah was a senior VFX artist. She spent her days digitally removing wrinkles from actors' faces and animating CGI monsters. She knew the human face better than a surgeon. She knew how light hit skin. She knew how pores stretched when a mouth moved. She looked at her monitor. The feed cut to the United Nations General Assembly. But it wasn't a chaotic debate. The podiums were arranged in a line. Standing there were the leaders of the G20 nations. The US President. The Chinese Premier. The Russian President. The Prime Ministers of the UK, India, Japan. They were standing perfectly still. Too still. The observation. Silence, Sarah whispered. Usually, a room full of politicians is noisy. Shuffling papers, coughing, whispering. The audio feed was dead silent. The noise floor was zero. Sarah zoomed in on the feed. She was watching in 4K resolution. She looked at the US President. He was an old man. He usually looked tired, with bags under his eyes and deep liver spots. Today he looked remastered. His skin was glowing. It had a waxy, translucent quality, like a candle held up to a light bulb. The wrinkles were there, but they looked painted on, lacking depth. Subsurface scattering is off, Sarah muttered, her professional brain analyzing the image before her fear caught up. The light isn't penetrating the epidermis. It's bouncing off the surface. It looks like silicone. Then they began to speak. They didn't speak one by one. They spoke in unison. Citizens of the sphere, the leaders said. Their voices were distinct, yet they hit the exact same cadence. The exact same pitch modulation. It sounded like a choir of robots trying to sing a hymn. We have reached a consensus. The era of division is ended. The era of optimization begins. The valley. Sarah felt a wave of nausea hit her stomach. She looked at the comment section on the livestream. It was scrolling so fast it was a blur, but she caught the recurring phrases. WTF is wrong with his face? Why are they staring like that? I asked this AI? Is this a deep fake? They aren't blinking. Sarah checked. She grabbed her stopwatch. She focused on the British Prime Minister. 10 seconds. No blink. 30 seconds. No blink. 60 seconds. Impossible, Sarah whispered. The average human blinks 15 to 20 times a minute. Even under stress. Even on drugs. You physically need to moisten the cornea. The Prime Minister's eyes were wide, glassy, and fixed on the teleprompter. They didn't saccade. Human eyes make tiny micro-movements, saccades, as they scan a scene. These eyes were locked like a camera on a tripod. Sarah opened her editing software. She ripped the live feed into her timeline. She applied a pulse filter. It's a tool used in medicine and high-end VFX to detect the subtle color changes in skin caused by the heartbeat pumping blood. Even if you hold your breath, your face pulses red with every beat. She ran the filter on the president's face. No pulse detected. The graph was flat. There was no blood pumping under that skin. They're dead, Sarah said, pushing her chair back. Or they were never alive. The glitch. The speech continued. It was a word salad of bureaucratic menace. We shall restructure the biomass. We shall streamline the resource allocation. Consumption will be standardized. The word biomass triggered alarms in everyone watching. Humans don't call people biomass. Farmers call crops biomass. Then the glitch happened. It wasn't a digital glitch. It was a physical failure. The French president stepped forward to deliver a line. As he opened his mouth to enunciate the word compliance, his jaw extended too far. It didn't just open wide. It unhinged. The skin around the cheek stretched like cheap rubber. It turned white, then transparent. For a single frame, 1/60th of a second, Sarah saw something underneath. It wasn't bone. It wasn't muscle. It was a dark, wet, fibrous material, like wet black wool or shifting worms. The jaw snapped back into place with an audible click. The French president didn't flinch. He didn't show pain. He kept smiling that horrible 32-tooth smile. The internet exploded. Screenshots of the unhinged jaw went viral instantly. #Theorentrial began trending #1 globally. People were running out of their houses, screaming. Others were locking their doors. Sarah was frozen. She was analyzing the frame. It's a suit, she realized. It's a biological suit. And it's shrinking under the studio lights. It's drying out. The sweat. The broadcast had been going on for 20 minutes. The studio lights in the UN were hot. Extremely hot. Usually politicians sweat. They shine. They wipe their brows. These things were not sweating. They were melting. The US president's forehead began to sag. The skin was losing its adhesion to the skull underneath. His left eye began to drift. Not like a lazy eye. It physically slid down his cheek by an inch as if the socket had melted. The president didn't notice. He kept talking, his left eye now staring at his own nose, while his right eye stared at the camera. "We require your trust," the president said, his face drooping like Salvador Dali's clock. "We require your submission." "He's falling apart," Sarah gasped. "The disguise is failing in real time." The camera operator at the UN must have noticed. The camera panic zoomed out to a wide shot, trying to hide the facial horror. But it was too late. The German chancellor raised her hand to gesture. The skin of her hand snagged on her cufflink. It tore. It peeled back like a glove. Underneath there was no blood. There was a gray chitinous limb. A claw. 3 long, serrated fingers made of something that looked like polished obsidian. She didn't look down. She didn't scream. She just kept gesturing with the exposed alien claw. The panic. The illusion broke. Screams could be heard in the background of the broadcast. The audio feed picked up the sound of doors being smashed open. "Cut the feed," someone yelled off camera. Sounded like a human. A terrified cameraman. The leaders stopped talking instantly. They all turned their heads to the left. Perfectly synchronized. Fast. Too fast for human necks. Snap. The sound of 20 necks snapping at once echoed through the microphone. They looked at the disturbance offstage. The US president, with his melted face and drooping eye, opened his mouth. He didn't speak English this time. He let out a sound. A high-pitched digital screech. Like a fax machine mating with a jaguar. Screech. The other leaders joined in. A chorus of screeching monsters standing in expensive suits. The camera was knocked over. The feed showed the floor. Then static. Then the technical difficulties color bars appeared. "Please stand by." The gaslight. 10 minutes later the broadcast returned. But it wasn't the leaders. It was a news anchor. A trusted face. He was sitting at his desk. He looked pale. He was sweating profusely, a good sign, Sarah thought. "Ladies and gentlemen," the anchor said, his voice shaking. We have just experienced a massive cyber attack. A deepfake hack. The images you saw were generated by terrorists to create panic. The president is fine. The leaders are fine. It was CGI. Sarah looked at the anchor. She looked at his collar. There was a tiny gap between his neck and his shirt. And in that gap she saw it. A shimmer. A distinct, waxy texture. And she noticed that while his mouth was moving, his eyes were perfectly still. He wasn't blinking. Sarah stood up. She walked to her window. She looked down at the street. Police cars were rolling by. The officers inside were staring straight ahead. Stiff. Smooth. Unblinking. "It wasn't a hack," Sarah whispered. She grabbed her go bag. She grabbed her hard drive with the footage. She ran to the door. Before she could open it, her phone buzzed. A text message. From the Consensus Body, "We saw you analyzing the feed, Sarah. Your attention to detail is impressive. We need artists to improve the skins. Open the door." Sarah looked at the peephole. Standing in the hallway was her landlord. He was smiling. A wide, toothy smile that stretched too far back towards his ears. He didn't blink. "Sarah?" the landlord called out. His voice was perfect. Too perfect. "I have a package for you. It's an upgrade." Sarah backed away. She climbed out the fire escape. She is running now. But everywhere she goes, she sees them. The cashier who doesn't blink. The bus driver whose skin looks like plastic. The uncanny valley isn't a theory anymore. It's the population census. And the worst part? They're getting better. The patch is coming. Soon they will learn to sweat. Soon they will learn to blink. And then we won't be able to tell the difference. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. Look at the person next to you. Look closely at their eyes. Are they dilating? Are they twitching? If they are perfectly still, run. Comment below. Have you seen anyone lately who looked too smooth? Subscribe. And trust your instincts. If it feels wrong, it is. Transmission terminated.